Gen Z is about to be completely stranded in the economy. The career ladder that they think they're supposed to climb in order to live their adult lives no longer exists. There's no entry point for them to even begin establishing their careers because of artificial intelligence and automation. And these same young people are now mired in tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt that they're never going to be able to repay because they can't get the jobs they need to be able to repay them. And then obviously at the same time, there's ongoing conversations happening right now about cost of living and especially getting access to housing and being able to afford a home. So Gen Z is stranded. There's nowhere for them to go, and there's no real opportunities for them to get out of the situation they're in. Of course, people can be creative, and nothing is set in stone. But for the most part, if you're a Gen Zer and you think that you're going to follow the playbook that everyone else followed, going to college, getting a job, and then getting married, buying a house, starting a family, working that career for 40 years, then retiring. That's not how the world is working anymore. AI is here, automation is here, and disruption is here as a result. So this is a piece I want to dive into today, published by New York Magazine in Intelligencer, and it's all about Gen Z. It's how there's no reason to deal with young employees. There's just no reason to deal with young employees. And so it's all about how AI is taking entry level jobs. And this piece has started to go viral because it really hits home. What's happening with young people and how they are being affected by job displacements. And I know that there's people who think that AI is hype, and you're free to believe that. But the reality is, the technology is here and the capital is being put behind it to continue developing it and advance it. And because of the financial windfall that lies on the other side, not even just financial windfall, whoever develops artificial general intelligence first, like they're going to secure themselves a spot in the history books. Okay. In much the same way we talk about Henry Ford and the Model T, we talk about Andrew Carnegie and the Vanderbilts and all the work that they did, to industrialize the United States. Whoever gets to artificial general intelligence, they're going to establish a legacy for themselves, the likes of which will never be beaten, right? So there's the financial aspect of it, but there's also an ego aspect of it as well. So there's all the reason in the world the developers of AI have to build it, and that's why they are full steam ahead. And I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. So just because you think AI can't do your job today, doesn't mean it won't be able to do it tomorrow. So let's dive in. This piece starts with profiling a young PricewaterhouseCoopers consultant who was on the forefront of doing just this, helping clients integrate AI agents into their workflows. This was a 26-year-old. And so he talks here, he says, occasionally when the PwC consultant lingered on the downstream effects of his work, he felt like Dr. Frankenstein looking at his monster. There was a sense of awe, and then it's kind of shock and fear and almost disgust. He says, King knew consultants were called hatchetmen for a reason, but it was becoming clear to him that the agents his teams built were capable of wiping out not just individual jobs, but even job categories. I really wanted to highlight this and how it opens up this piece, because the young people who are doing this, that they are at the forefront of technological related job displacements, they're at the forefront of AI adoption. They're very acutely aware of what's happening. They're very much in tune to how things are changing, and much in the way that I would say older workers just aren't. I think older workers are, head in the sand. They want to deny what is happening, but the people who are on the front lines of this, young people who are doing this, they are completely aware that what they are doing not only will wipe out their jobs and make them redundant, but it's going to wipe out jobs for other people too. And so it goes into how they were preparing for a presentation, and they stayed up with some colleagues late into the night working on it. And he says one colleague, a senior manager, wondered whether his kids should even bother studying computer science. We just kept asking things like, what exactly are we doing with this job? Am I going to be protected from what I'm building? Should I be upskilling and trying to learn new things as well? So the people who are at the forefront of this, who are building this and implementing AI, are asking the same questions that everyone else should be asking as well. It's like, okay, what's the point of college anymore? is this going to come for me next? Like, I'm building it today. Will it come for me next? And these are really, really important questions that I think most people have been putting off asking. But now that I think layoffs are really starting to pick up speed and there's more awareness and acceptance that, okay, this is actually happening, I think people are starting to wake up and realize, okay, like, here we are. This is here. College is no longer an option. Frankly, my personal opinion is if you're in college, drop out. And if you're planning to go to college, don't. The value proposition is no longer there. But then, obviously asking questions, should I be upskilling? And this is something I advocate for. I advocate for becoming AI literate. So not necessarily upskilling per se, but understanding how AI works, understanding how to leverage it, and understanding the jobs that are coming online as they come online so you can be best prepared to take advantage of it. So it's when opportunity meets preparation meets opportunity. So start preparing now. So when opportunities arise, like, you're the first one your boss picks, and you beat out the rest of the competition. Because I think that's what it's going to come down to. But even then, like, I have anxiety about this all the time too. It's like, okay, yeah, I need to upskill, but then where do you even begin? Or, something I was thinking about upskilling is like prompt engineering. Okay, it's valuable at the moment, but for how much longer? So these are really important questions people need to be asking. So what's ironic about this little vignette in the beginning of this piece is that this young consultant was participating in a PwC hackathon. And he won. He got first place out of thousands of submissions, and so he presented in October. He presented his winning product to a team. It was a team of AI agents he'd built in his free time, so not even on company time. This is something he did for fun outside of work. So he presented it to 70,000 employees, and he was thinking to himself, "Okay, this is good. It's going to lock opportunities for me." And he thought, "I'm safe from a layoff." And then 2 hours after he finished his presentation, PwC laid him off. So this proves even the people who are implementing AI and who understand how to use it aren't safe from being laid off as a result of it. And this should send chills down the spine of every single white collar worker. Because, everyone who works in a white collar job knows, like, okay, once this happens, there aren't a lot of options. There aren't a lot of alternatives for you to go to. It's not like 2008, right? When people lost jobs, you could just go back to college, or you could make a career pivot, or you could try, do something else with your life, or even just take a temporary job to bide your time. It's clear this is going to be happening all at once to millions of people. Competition is going to be fierce. It's going to be a race to the bottom for wages. So really, it's going to hit, and it's going to hit really, really hard. Okay. So it talks here about how the extent of automation is happening, and it's contested by a lot of people, and there's a lot of people who think it's really overinflated. There are some studies that have come out that say, okay, well, it's not really having an impact on the economy. MIT came out with their paper within the last year that said 95% of AI pilots fail, but it's not necessarily because they're failing because of the technology. There's other reasons for the pilots failing, in part just because of how they're deploying them and the knowledge of the people responsible for deploying them, and just where AI is currently at, not where it's going. But that doesn't mean it's not going to advance in the future, and that doesn't mean that companies aren't positioning themselves now, freeing up capital on their balance sheets now to reallocate it towards potential future AI solutions rather than hiring entry-level staff. But one of the things it calls out here is, so Goldman Sachs is piloting Devin, which is an AI agent that will automate software engineering. And the next paragraph goes in to talk about a paper that Stanford's Digital Economy Lab published over the summer that talked about how entry-level coders are the first statistically significant casualties of AI automation. And so it found that there was a 20% decline in employment for software developers. And I've done a separate video on this. If you want to check that out, you can. But it's very clear if you just look anecdotally at the Gen Zers who are recent college grads who are trying to find entry-level software engineering jobs. They can't find them. There's a super high unemployment rate. It's almost double the national unemployment rate for software developers and folks with computer science degrees. So It's very clear this is impacting them. Of course, there's myriad reasons for why this is happening. It's not just because of AI. Something new that has come to light as the H-1B visa program is currently being discussed on Capitol Hill. Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Georgia put forth legislation to end the program. And it's coming to light as a result of that program that thousands of H-1B visa holders are coming from India, and they are actually taking entry level jobs. So the assumption has been, okay, you have all these high skilled technical workers coming from places like China, coming from places like India, who are doing jobs and providing, not providing, but like augmenting and supplementing the work that American workers do, and they're providing value to the economy. When in reality, what's happening is these workers are coming into the US economy, they're taking entry level jobs and they're being underpaid to do those jobs because if you have a visa and your visa is contingent on your continued employment with a particular company, they have significant leverage every year, so they can pay you less. So that's happening. And then obviously as well, kind of corollary to that is offshoring of white collar work. So companies like Microsoft have large offices in India. And instead of employing an American here in the United States, and instead of dealing with the H-1B visa program at all, they are just offshoring white collar knowledge work, specifically developer and engineering roles, and they're just shipping them off to India. In much the same way, manufacturers shipped off production and manufacturing in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So that is happening. So that is happening in conjunction with the adoption of AI. But one of the things it talks about here is Devin. So I wanted to just like show this to you in case you haven't seen it. So this is basically an AI agent that is currently being licensed out to companies like Goldman Sachs, and it can do all the entry level stuff that developers quickly or typically do. So it integrates with Slack. It can, if you have a Jira ticket, it can resolve the ticket, and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty basic stuff, right? Doing bugs and triage, app development. So it's not coming after all software developers, right? But this is good enough where companies are like, okay, we'll just hire this. We'll outsource. So you can get started with this for as low as $20 for like a very basic license. Then it goes up to 500, and then of course enterprise level is going to be more. But compare that to a cost of a recent college grad, right? Like a recent college grad is going to cost, what, I don't know what the going rate for a software developer is, at least, 70, 80, $90,000 a year, if not more. So you're saving on the salary costs, you're saving on the overhead of providing them, space in a physical office. They're not going to take vacation time. They're not going to get sick. This thing can work 24/7, so you don't have to accommodate for, 16 hours of non-productive work every day. So this is a no-brainer, and it's no wonder why, companies like Goldman Sachs are using it. Goldman Sachs is in the business of making money from money. They're not in the business of making sure that their workers have time off to sleep at night. So that's what they're doing. And like the data is still coming in, and a lot of the data is insufficient to quantitatively say, yes, AI is taking this job. But the initial data that is coming forward, especially for software developers, shows there's a strong indication that at least for that career, AI has already started displacing workers, especially at the entry level, and there's good reason to believe this will spread to other white-collar jobs as well. Okay, so this is another anecdote here from a woman who got a degree, and she went into or I think she does like advertising or something, but her parents want her to go to law school. And this is the case. A lot of parents, they want their kids, you can do whatever in undergrad, but then you go into grad school and you're supposed to go to like med school, or you're supposed to go to law school. And for the longest time, law school has been assumed to be the safe option. And this is what a lot of people did during the financial crisis in 2008. Like law school enrollments went through the roof, right? Because people were kind of going back to school and looking for those safer places to restart their careers. And so she's talking about that. She's been this woman has spent the last 7 months searching for an entry-level job in media, and she just registered for the LSAT to appease her parents. But she says I'd enter the workforce 4 years from now, and AI is going to be more advanced. It seems to be taking paralegal jobs away from people who have already been working there and people who have gone to law school. So that's scary. That decades-old fail safe is seemingly gone. So they're aware. Gen Z is aware of what's happening, but there's pressure, especially from older generations, their parents, who aren't aware, who are completely oblivious to what's happening. And I'll say, just from my own experience, I had the good fortune when I was an undergrad to be like an assistant at the law school. So I worked in a couple offices in the law school, and I befriended a lot of the law students who went on to obviously graduate and go start their careers in Washington, where I started my career. And I will say, just from observing them, the law school that they went to was a tier 3 law school, not a very good law school, even though Joe Biden went there. Not a very good law school. And the ones who had dual degrees, either with the business school or the public affairs school, kind of did okay. The ones who just went to the law school and just had a law degree, they struggled. I knew law students who had 6 figures of debt, and the only jobs they could find were contract-based jobs, short-term project jobs, and they were basically doing contract review. So just looking through contracts, analyzing them, stuff that obviously ChatGPT can do now. And they were only making $30, $40, $50 an hour. So, when you have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and you're not making much money outside of law school, like that's not good. So my takeaway, because I was considering going to law school at a point in time, right? And my takeaway was, okay, the juice isn't worth the squeeze here, because you have to either go to a tier 1 school, so like your Harvards, your Yales, those types of schools, and then you have to go and get a job at a top law firm. So unless you go to a tier 1 school, and unless you get a job at a top firm, the jobs that remain for law grads really aren't that good. They don't pay well. Obviously, everyone knows like public defenders don't pay well. So what you're left with is going to be a lot of low value grunt work. And I think up until now, especially in like smaller towns, I think lawyers have gotten away with this, like estate lawyers and lawyers helping form businesses and just like routine administrative stuff, because they have expertise that the average person doesn't. And if you've ever read a legal contract, you know how convoluted they are. But now things are changing, right? Things are rapidly changing where you don't need to hire a lawyer anymore. Later on in this essay, talks about someone who fed a contract into ChatGPT, asked it a couple prompts to highlight, some weird passages, and, says they shaved off several hours worth of legal fees. And if you've ever dealt with a lawyer, you know how expensive they are. So, I don't know that there's going to be job opportunities, or at least the job opportunities law school grads need to pay their bills for much longer. I think that is rapidly waning. Okay, so here it highlights a opinion shared by a professor at the University of Virginia, at the head of the Economics of Transformative AI Initiative. And he says, over the next 5 months, I would definitely expect it to bleed into additional white-collar areas. Even if companies aren't going through huge layoffs, maybe they're now running pilots with AI agents. Maybe they are saying, let's not commit to hiring that associate. So basically what he's saying here is, even if these companies aren't using AI just yet, even if they aren't outsourcing to programs like Devin, or there's some people who are waiting for specific vendors to come up with their own internal AI solutions, rather than onboarding a new vendor and just complicating things. While companies bide their time and start like figuring out their AI strategies, they're not employing people. They're halting new employment. So those jobs are going away. They're just disappearing. And then they're trying to get people off their books as quickly as possible, because humans cost money, and they need to free up these companies need to free up capital that they can redeploy against AI. And they have to do this. And I don't think people realize like the impetus for doing this. They have to do this to stay competitive, right? Because if they don't invest in this technology, and all of their competitors do, investors are going to pull their capital out of these companies. So they're going to sell shares of their stock, and they're going to go buy stock at companies who do. So even if you're not even in the same, industry, if you're a company, let's say you're IBM, for example, if you're IBM and you're not pursuing AI, and I'm invested in IBM, but I'm looking over at Tesla and I'm looking over at Amazon, and they're definitely investing in AI, as an investor who wants to maximize the return on my investment, I'm going to pull my money out of IBM and I'm going to put it into a company like Amazon or Tesla. Obviously, IBM is adopting AI, so that's just an example. But there are companies that aren't, and so in order to retain investor capital, these companies have to start adopting AI, whether they want to or not. And so they need to free up cash on their balance sheets in order to start investing in this. And the easiest way to do that is to get rid of overhead, to get rid of human workers. So that's what they're doing. And so it talks about here how I think Anna, I think her name. No, this is a different one. Okay. So Anna, she's the one who she went to school to study history, and then she started working in marketing and advertising. And she talks about how her company loves AI and wants everyone to use AI, even though it's producing low quality stuff. And it does. Like, I think it's a good starting point for certain things, and it requires human refinement. But it's not good enough yet to just put something like a prompt in and then get a complete product in return. Like, you as a human either need to refine the prompt multiple times, or you need to take the output and refine the output. But it's not 100% just yet. So she says here, and again, this is what I'm saying, Gen Z is completely aware of what's happening. She says, it's so obvious I'm training something to replace me. And I think that's kind of why I've been hesitant to use it. Because if I can make it do my job successfully, then they don't need me to do my job anymore. And that's absolutely true. A lot of people don't realize by using AI to do their jobs, they're also training AI to replace them. And this puts people in a catch-22. And I'm deeply sympathetic to this because I'm in the same boat with everyone. Like, I'm thinking about this too. It's like, okay, on the one hand, you need to be AI literate. You need to understand what these tools are. You need to know how to use them. And if you want to stay competitive, I think you need to be certified and knowledgeable on how to use specific aspects of it and how to use these tools. Because as these jobs are, as people are being displaced by all the forces at play here, including AI, you want to make yourself as competitive as possible. It kind of feels like Hunger Games almost, right? Like, you're trying to be the last man standing in your office, in your company, in your career field. Like, you're trying to outlast and survive and beat everyone else and keep your job the longest. I feel like that's kind of the game that people need to start thinking about playing right now. And so in order to be the last person to keep your job the longest, like, you have to be innovative, you have to be agile, you have to be quick on your feet, you have to be a quick adopter of these things, and you have to become proficient at it very quickly. So on the one hand, I think people need to do that. But on the other hand, I think she's right. It is replacing you. Like, it's going to take your job. At some point, your employer may not need you, regardless of how skilled you are. And then, of course, there's other negative consequences of this as well. There's research that's emerging that, AI chatbots are leading people to do bad things. It's having a negative effect on the brain, and our own neural networks. And so, is it necessarily a good technology? Is it something we should be spending all of our time becoming proficient in? Or is the juice not worth the squeeze there, and maybe we should pull back? I think this is a real big problem that people need to start considering, but it puts everyone in a tough position. It's, how much time do you invest in this? Because it's going to replace you, and you want to stay competitive, but how much time do you also not invest in it because it is going to replace you, and what's the point? I think that's really important to think about. So it talks about here, Gen Zers are now accustomed to the fact that AI permeates white-collar work, starting with both sides of the hiring process. Now, pay attention to this sentence very, very closely. People looking for jobs use AI to tailor resumes and cover letters in order to get the attention of AI programs vetting applications. And I bet you the hiring managers are also using AI to generate their hiring descriptions and their job postings. So you have AI generated job postings, you have AI tailored resumes, you have applicant tracking systems that are vetting applicants using AI, and in some cases, HR managers have been completely eliminated and replaced by AI. So if you've noticed here, the whole prospect of getting a job has eliminated the human from the process. And this was something I experienced, and I wrote a piece about in Business Insider a couple of years ago. But I was really interested in how AI was being onboarded, and I was interested in like hourly work and how folks in retail level jobs, low wage jobs, were being affected. And so I went through the exercise of applying to several fast food jobs. So I think I went to like Carl's Jr., McDonald's, Wendy's, and a couple other places, and I applied. And I applied at Carl's Jr. I use there's an AI integration similar to Devin. I think it's called Alexa, that a lot of these companies will outsource to, and so you will answer a couple questions like, are you all in the chat bot, right? So you'll answer questions like, are you a US citizen? Okay, like some basic filtering things, right? Do you have availability to work these days? Fine. Okay, and then the next process, well, let's schedule you for an interview. So I went through that process. It scheduled me for an interview. I showed up to the restaurant for the interview. They weren't prepared for me to do the interview. They had no idea it was coming. The scheduling software that the AI used wasn't integrated with the scheduling software that the store manager used. So that person happened to be off that day. But it was really interesting because I was there physically in person communicating to humans at this store. It was clear they were hiring, they needed help, and they were at a loss and had no way to process my application. I was physically standing there. And because the processes have become so automated and the humans have been removed from the processes and the decision making, you could go stand face to face with someone who needs to hire you and they are hamstrung and they have no way of actually like going forth and giving you a job. It's not like in the past where you could just show up somewhere, fill out a paper application, and get a call later in the afternoon that you got the job. It's becoming increasingly hard. So if that was happening, and that happened to me at a fast food restaurant, like I can only imagine what's going on in bigger, larger corporations where you're just again like a number, and you're just another resume out of thousands of resumes coming in digitally, and you have no connection, no face, nothing to these companies, and you're just a bunch of keywords on a resume. But it's just AI products are now vetting other AI products. So humans aren't even part of the process anymore. So no wonder why people are struggling to find jobs. For the very few jobs that actually exist, it's all based on AI now. So it talks here, another person had talked about how they had developed AI tools and basically were concerned about automating work based on having their jobs automated based on the product they had developed using vibe coding. And the young person quoted here, says that they weren't laid off, but he says, if everyone understood how to use AI, how to prompt it and order thoughts and provide references, a lot of jobs would be eliminated tomorrow, he told me. The reason you haven't seen mass layoffs is ignorance. And I think this is, to some degree, true. The people who are in charge of making decisions right now within companies understand AI is coming. Well, it's already here, but it's going to get better. They understand the imperative to provide maximum return on shareholder value. They understand the competitive landscape in which their businesses operate is rapidly changing, but they don't quite know how to integrate AI into their workflows. They don't quite know how to use AI. And so once they do understand it, once people are proficient in prompting it and evaluating how the AI tools think and integrating it into workflows, I think that's when a lot of mass layoffs are going to happen. I think we're on the cusp of that, and it's about to happen at scale. Okay, so this next section talks about a CEO who developed a data sharing platform and uses ChatGPT. And he says he sees AI as a total workforce reset. Our economy has a decent percentage of fake jobs that barely had a reason to exist in the first place. This is true. I've talked about this extensively. If you haven't read David Graeber's Bullshit Jobs, highly recommend reading that. There's a lot of fake jobs, not fake jobs, but jobs that have no reason to exist, and it's just busy work. Okay, he says there's just no reason to deal with the headache of having young employees who frequently do the wrong thing, who frequently, take up time and space. I asked him what Gen Z, the entry-level coders and associate attorneys in those fake jobs were supposed to do without opportunities. Be smarter around the new shit and be cheaper, he says. And so this is how corporate executives are thinking. This is what like the decision makers at the very top are thinking. They don't see workers as people. They see workers as numbers on spreadsheets, and they are looking to optimize those spreadsheets and get as much out of those workers as possible. They don't see workers as humans anymore. They don't, and this is an interesting juxtaposition with the earlier part of this essay, where you had a 26-year-old PwC consultant who was on the front lines of implementation and was thinking deeply about this, like, whoa, what are we building here? How many jobs is this going to eliminate? This guy who's, the co-founder of a, startup is like, I don't care. Like, you have to be smarter and you have to be cheaper. And like, yeah, there's some truth to that. But, everyone isn't going to be smarter, right? There's a curve to how much smart someone has and how much they can deploy that to their advantage. For the average person, which I think most people are average, they fall in the middle. They're gonna be caught flat-footed, and the rug is gonna be pulled out from underneath them, and they're not gonna have options. So I think that really is it's a cop-out for people in leadership positions to say something like that. But it's very clear that they don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care about your family. They don't care about your well-being. And I think it's important to proceed with that in mind. I think people know a lot of like executives don't care. But I also don't think people fully appreciate the conversations these people are having, right? So it's guys like this who are building the AI systems that are going to replace workers. You have a whole slew of these people out in San Francisco right now who are building without any recognition of how this is going to impact the rest of the world. They're just chasing their legacy, chasing higher valuations. They don't care. Like, you're not even on their radar. Okay. And so he says, the author says, this attitude is unsurprisingly popular among CEOs. At a Beverly Hills conference last spring, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang said that you're not going to lose your job to an AI, but you're going to lose your job to someone who uses AI. This is absolutely true. So it's not necessarily that AI is going to take your job. It's going to be the people who have already started learning how to use AI are going to be the ones that stay, and the ones who don't know how to use AI are going to be the ones to go. And there's a number of companies that have come forward with AI first policies that talk about this. Even Amazon in June had a memo that talked about this. Like, you either become AI literate, you learn how to use these tools now, or pack your bags because you're not going to have a job for much longer. But what they don't talk about here, which is also important to consider, is that person who takes your job, who knows how to use AI, doesn't necessarily have to be physically seated in the city you work in, or even frankly the country you're in. So there are all sorts of highly skilled workers in Eastern Europe and India and Bangladesh and Pakistan and the Philippines who for years now have been American workers have been outsourcing. Companies have been outsourcing small scale, not really at scale, but have been outsourcing projects and development work. Low value like admin work. It's been outsourced to these folks for years now. And something I've used virtual assistants in the Philippines. Something I was advocating for a while until I started thinking about the implications of this, and I was like, oh my gosh. This is not necessarily good. But it's not even just like you're not competing with other workers here in the United States who know how to use AI. You're also competing with people all over the world. And the problem is none of us here in the United States can compete on price. So yeah, you can be smarter, you can know how to use all this stuff, but you're never going to be able to compete on cost unless you go live and you move to the Philippines or Thailand, and you can live somewhere that requires you to earn a far lower income than what you need to survive here in the United States. So I think that's really important. Okay, so it says universities, HR types, and clickbait career sites are on board too, urging students and workers to future-proof their careers by reskilling and beefing up their soft skills. AI fluency will be central to what Brian Ackerman, lead AI strategist for the global headhunter Korn Ferry, calls a new set of job families. So yeah, you're going to have to know how to reskill, and obviously like soft skills are going to be valuable because AI at this point in time doesn't have emotions. So solving intra-office conflict is going to be the responsibility of humans, not AI. But any other job that requires rote skill, I think is going to be on the chopping block. So yeah, there are some things you can do to future-proof your careers, but even then, there's going to be an expiration date on that. And I think we've been seeing this over the last decade. It seems like every couple of years you've had to reskill and learn something new and learn something new. It's a lot of these skills people have been learning. There hasn't been a long life cycle or lifespan to those skills, and it seems like people constantly are learning new things, doing new things, and it's never enough. And I think the pace of this is going to pick up to a point where you're going to reskill and learn something today and it's going to be obsolete in a couple of weeks. So this is something to seriously start thinking about. Do you want to spend the rest of your career in a hamster wheel constantly reskilling, or do you want to pursue something else? Is there another vocation, another career, another job you could pursue that has a little bit more life and the skills that you'll be asked to pick up? I think that's really important to start considering. Okay. So this is from the director of automation for a small information technology consultancy. And so she's talking about all like the bullshit tasks people do, copying and pasting, uploading and downloading. And yeah, I get it. I've been there, done that. And this person is more of an optimist. She says this is allowing people to have time to do higher value activities that not only serve the companies better, but are more fulfilling. She says, but how many ambitious employees do we expect employers to retain? And if AI is only going to get better, what's the point of upskilling? I think there's some truth to this, but this is also a talking point that continues to be pushed. And I don't know how much truth there is to it. Okay, so the assumption is if you use AI to augment your job and help you become more efficient, you're going to have more free time to do higher value work. Yes, that is absolutely true. However, do most people know what higher value work is, or have command of their time and understand where they can allocate more time to that higher value work? I don't think most people are disciplined in that. And I say that as someone who left the white collar world in 2019, has been working for herself for the past, several years now. And this has been something I've had to learn how to do. And it's been very difficult, constantly struggling with this, learning how to not just manage my time, prioritize how to spend my time, figure out what things are more important to invest in from a time perspective, how to manage long-term projects with short-term projects. That's the benefit of working in an office, and you have a team, you have, program managers, you have a boss, you have someone to help keep you on task, and you have guidance coming from above, probably some sort of, strategic office or whatever, that is telling you what to focus on, what to prioritize. When you're on your own and you're doing things independently, you don't always have that. So to some degree, if you're savvy and you're paying attention to what your company is doing, and you're able to tap into those priorities and save time so you can do side projects, like that guy did for PwC building the AI agent, maybe that will pay off, right? But it's not guaranteed that it will, and it's not guaranteed that people will use their freed up time wisely to do those higher value activities. And then obviously, how many ambitious employees do we expect to retain? So yeah, everyone has been saying this, like, there's still going to be need for workers. There's still going to be new jobs that are going to be created. That's true. But how many new jobs exactly will be created? I personally don't think there's going to be enough supply of new jobs created out of AI to employ all of the people who are being displaced by it. I think if you're going to become more efficient, that means eliminating as much superfluous, redundant work as possible. And much of the work that we have now in the white collar economy is redundant and unnecessary, and it's part of a larger bureaucratic bloat that has been encompassing this type of work for decades now. So it says, if the number of entry-level jobs dwindles across industries, naturally the supply of experienced employees will wane. This is really important. Without entry-level positions, how will the next generation of middle managers and executives get training? So this is talking to the fact that, okay, if Gen Z isn't able to get an entry-level job, they're not getting a foot in the door, they're not starting their careers, you're going to lose an entire generation of new workers who will eventually develop institutional knowledge within their fields, learn how their companies work, and grow into management positions, right? So a great example, I worked at Booz Allen Hamilton for a couple of years. Booz Allen Hamilton, the CEO, famously started as, I think, an intern, and he's been working his way up ever since. So now he's the CEO. So that's a good example. You have someone who was an intern, had that entry level job, continued to work, literally climb the career ladder, and is now the executive of a company. What this is saying, and this is suggesting, is that that's no longer going to be an opportunity or a possibility because that first rung of the career ladder is gone. There's no entry point for Gen Z entry level workers. Therefore, because there's nowhere to start, there's nowhere for them to advance into. And so because there's nowhere to advance into, there's going to be a loss of people in a generation who can be the next middle managers and executives. The problem with this assumption, though, is the belief that there's still going to be middle managers and executives. These are two categories of workers who, similar to Gen Z and entry level, they're on the chopping block for being displaced by AI. I think the OECD identified middle managers and chief executives as job categories where they're highly at risk to automation from AI. And it makes sense. Like, I think a smart, savvy AI is going to be able to run companies far better than human chief executive officers will be able to. And again, for a fraction of the cost, like everyone talks about how much money, an absurd amount of money that chief executives make. Well, there you go. That solves the problem right there. So the assumption is you need entry-level workers to grow up and develop knowledge that they can then leverage in a decade or two to become middle managers. But in the new AI economy, I don't think there will be a need for middle managers. So what does that mean? It means wherever you are in your career, you're kind of stuck. You're stuck. So even if you survive this onslaught of layoffs and displacement that is already underway, there's not necessarily going to be an opportunity for you to grow into. You can learn new skills and learn how to leverage AI to stay employable. But there's no career ladder left for anyone to climb. Like if you're, my age in your early 30s and you think you're going to become, the CEO of a company or, a manager someday, like that's gone. That's gone. You're going to be affected just as much as Gen Z. And even though Gen Z is at the forefront of it now, like your time's coming. So one of the other problems complicating this is that policy moves slower than AI. And so there's a major concern that if income is abruptly severed from labor, there's a genuine fear that the chasm of inequality will quickly solidify. I think this is very true. It references Bernie Sanders' recent video about AI wiping out working class jobs. I've also done a separate commentary about that if you want to check that out as well. But he's the first politician on Capitol Hill to even be talking about this. And that's not a compliment because he's, old and on his way out anyways. No one is talking about this. No one is preparing for this. So while everyone is squabbling about the minute details of today and operating our government today, no one is talking about what's about to happen. So what happens if millions of people lose their jobs en masse? Well, this happened in 1929. You saw that with the Great Depression. And the only way we got out of the Great Depression is, one, the expansion of the federal government to become the primary employer of the country. So you had all these public works programs that were created to employ people and give them a paycheck. And then two, World War II. So if we go through another Great Depression-like scenario where millions of people lose their jobs en masse and there isn't any sort of social safety net left to take care of them, because you're going to have all these people cleaving onto it, right? So whatever unemployment or food stamps or other benefits you think you're going to get when you lose your job in the next year or two, like don't bank on that. There's not going to be enough in the coffers to pay everyone. So something is going to have to replace it. And I don't know. I don't know if there will be any solution in time. People have talked about universal basic income. I don't think that's a solution, and I don't think it's going to be in place anytime soon. And frankly, I don't think you want universal basic income because that is only going to reduce the standard of living to the lowest common denominator. It's not going to be an opportunity for social mobility or advancement. So whatever lifestyle the government deems that you are worthy of deserving, if you are dependent on UBI, that's what you get. So I don't think that's necessarily a solution. And so it concludes this section by highlighting a post from someone on Access. Says you have 2 years to create a podcast in order to escape the permanent underclass. And this is something I absolutely believe to be true. Why do you think I'm on YouTube? I was doing writing for a while, and that was pretty good. And then obviously doing my own writing, and it takes time to build readership, right? So kind of building that on the side. But I've come to the realization, quite sobering one. Young people really don't read as much anymore, and there isn't there's so much competition for written digital media, and not to say there's not competition for, audiovisual media as well, but there's so much competition for written media, and the number of people consuming written media is rapidly declining because people just don't read anymore. Like, you have to diversify and do other things. So, that's why I'm here. I recognize that part of this transition is going to lead to the proliferation of the attention economy, for better or for worse. And so, I'm trying to figure out, well, what do I do? How do I personally like navigate this transition and figure out how to maintain meaning and purpose in life and do things I enjoy doing while also, generating income and staying ahead of whatever UBI could be coming down the pike, not being stuck in a permanent underclass. So here we are. I think this is happening. So you don't necessarily have to create a podcast per se, or like start a YouTube channel. But I think it's worth starting to think about, like, do you have a business you could create for yourself that you could run, that, isn't going to come into competition with AI or automation? Is there something you can provide of value, that people will be willing to pay for? And I'm not talking about creating another SaaS software product, like an actual business, and it could be brick and mortar. It could be, your own unique spin on what's happening in the world, commentary and that kind of thing. Like, how do you leverage your unique value as a human being in the economy that's emerging? I think that's a question people need to start asking themselves in the wake of everything that's happening. I don't think relying on, a W-2 employer is going to be the best bet for the future. Okay, so it dives in and talks about a recent study OpenAI released, where it took AI's ability to accomplish over 1,300 real-world economically viable tasks across 44 occupations. So they looked at folks from Aetna and Bank of America, BBC News, HBO, et cetera, to evaluate how AI performed doing a number of different tasks. And so some of those tasks included creating a sales brochure, a registered nurse assessing skin lesion images and drafting a report, and lawyers drafting wills and memos. And it says on average humans won, but barely. And I think this is the point. It's, for now, like, we're still advanced enough to beat the AI, but not for much longer, and especially not with the trajectory in which AI is currently going. It says AI's biggest stumbling blocks weren't hallucinations or factual errors, but issues like formatting and following instructions, areas where AI is fast improving. And this is one of the big critiques from the MIT study. It's not necessarily that AI is factually wrong, although it can be, right? It's that it doesn't quite learn yet, so you can give it instructions and you can have it try to do something multiple times, especially like a very standardized process, like reading some sort of medical outcome and then creating a report on it, right? Like, that's something that you could standardize. The problem is AI isn't learning, or it doesn't have the capacity to learn just yet. So it can't repeat tasks every single time. Every outcome is always bespoke, and you have to tailor your prompts to either get the outcome you want, or you have to tailor the outcome to get what you're looking for. So that makes it less efficient in the short term, but eventually it's going to develop the skills it needs and be able to teach itself from its own mistakes in order to get better. And once that happens, like jobs are going to start rapidly disappearing. Okay, so it goes on to say there is no guarantee AI will improve from here, and many economists believe that, like the past, AI will ultimately create more jobs than it kills. Yeah, this is true. This is what a lot of optimists are saying. That, it's maybe it won't get better, maybe it's overhyped, and then it's going to create more jobs. The problem is, I think people assume that when AI creates new jobs, it's going to create W-2 benefited jobs like everyone has today, and I don't think that's going to happen. AI might create new tasks that it needs people to play. It might create projects, and it might create roles, but I don't necessarily think those are going to be W-2 fully benefited jobs. I think those are going to be gigified jobs that are outsourced to freelancers, virtual assistants, agencies, that kind of thing. So that there might be work generated as a result of AI. There's no guarantee in the amount of work, and there's no guarantee in the quality of that work. And I think because you'll have so many people looking for work and willing to do whatever to earn a paycheck, I think it's going to be a race to the bottom in wages. And so this is kind of a little bit more disturbing here at the bottom. But he talked to an economist from Virginia and says, when I suggest that in the future we'll all work as plumbers, carpenters, and artisans, Coronet cuts me off. Have you seen the robots lately? This is starting to come online as well. And I think people don't understand that AI and robotics kind of go hand in hand. So the evolution of robots has been dependent on the evolution of AI. And once you have independently thinking mental capabilities that are synthetically created and the product of AI, then you can implant that into a humanoid robot and allow it to do all sorts of different things. We haven't had that, right? But it's coming. And once we do, I think people are put on notice. So interest in embodied AI, which is nerd speak for robotics, has skyrocketed in recent years, and plenty of companies are vying with Boston Dynamics and Unitree to produce droids to work in factories, deliver goods, fight wars, pick apples, wash windows, put out fires, and carry out many other jobs. It talks about 1X here, their home housekeeping home assistant robot Neo. I've done a video on this as well. But you have that's come online. Amazon has already deployed almost its millionth robot into its warehouses. So you have this is already coming, and this is a huge problem, right? Because the obvious solution to white collar work, at least in the short term, is we'll go learn a trade, right? So go learn. And for a while, I think this is going to be a good thing. I think trades are going to be here for a while. I don't think you're not going to have a robot fixing a leaky faucet just yet, right? But there's other aspects to this that I think robots will be able to displace workers. So for women in particular, the option isn't going to necessarily be blue collar labor jobs. While women can go become welders and electricians and carpenters and plumbers, I don't think women are going to sign up for that. I think women are going to increasingly become caretakers because there is high demand for that in the economy, even though those jobs don't pay. So you have women who are going to become, housekeepers and nursing assistants and, preschool teachers and teaching assistants and all that kind of stuff, right? Well, if you've watched the 1X Neo promo, it's very clear that their robot is positioning itself to go for those domestic jobs. So, if you're elderly, right, and you have the option between a home health aide or a robot to come in and help care for you, I think a lot of people are going to choose a robot. Or there's people who are going to start creating companies purchasing all sorts of these robots and licensing them out. So instead of hiring a maid service to come and clean your house, you're going to hire a robotics powered maid service to do that for you. So this is going to be displace a lot more workers than people realize. It's not just going to be the white collar workers. It's okay. The people who are thinking about pivoting now, where do you go? Where do you go from here? The robots are coming. Okay, it says, even if humanoids prove to be lousy at skilled trades, robots are already replacing low-skilled jobs. So this is definitely true. And unfortunately, sometimes you need to start in those low-skilled jobs in order to advance into the skilled jobs, right? So you have to start somewhere. And in much the same way that AI is displacing white-collar entry-level workers, robotics are going to be displacing entry-level trade jobs. And so it's going to be harder and harder for people to get access to these jobs. Okay. And it closes by talking about how Gen Z is trying to get around their automation anxiety. At the end of the day, they're like, okay, well, AI doesn't lay off people, people lay off people. And, maybe it's okay to not work, 80 hours a week being a consultant at some big firm, right? Like maybe it's okay to take it easy and coast. So it talks about here how one Gen Zer got laid off from a company that made mobile video games. And he says, getting laid off was really nice, actually. I realized I don't want a career because a career is an identity. I just want a job to get paid so I can eat. He says now he's a dishwasher at a Whole Foods outside Dallas. And of course, the author says, well, for how much longer do you think he'll be a dishwasher for until Jeff Bezos automates that too? But I want to call the attention to the fact that he talks about career being an identity. And I think this is going to be the fundamental problem for a lot of people. Career isn't just a job. Like the thing you do from 9 to 5 every single day isn't just a means of earning an income. For some people, it certainly is, right? For some people, it's like, okay, I'm going to go do this, earn an income, and then, go deal with family and then that stuff afterwards. For a lot of people, especially younger workers who don't have family yet and who are just trying to get their start in life, your career is your identity. It's your professional value. It's your social capital. It's how you show up in the world and how other people see you. So for a lot of people, especially I would say millennials and Gen Xers who were put, if they were put in this situation, getting laid off and then becoming a dishwasher, I don't think many of them would choose that. I think that would be a symbol of a loss of dignity and a loss of status and a decline in their socioeconomic well-being. And you see evidence of this. I've covered this separately in other videos of women who have spent more than a year or two looking for work, can't find work, and are pleading for work on LinkedIn. Like, clearly, if they were actually desperate, they would go be servers. They would go do this kind of stuff, and they would be okay with it. But I think there's an ego element to it, and women especially, because their participation in society is far more predicated on status and social capital than men. I think they're going to be most affected by this. You're when you lose your career, you're going to lose your identity and a core part of who you are as a person. And I think it's important to start insulating yourself from that if you haven't already. Like, you have to become a more well-rounded person. You have to become someone who is more than just what you do for work. If you are only known, as Sarah, the marketing person, or John, the lawyer, and you have no other identity beyond that, like, you are going to be mentally and emotionally and psychologically consumed by all of this, not just financially ruined. Like, this is going to be a big deal. A big deal. So yeah, this is kind of dark, but this is what's happening, and I think it's important that people wake up and pay attention to this. It's not just Gen Z that's going to lose their jobs. It's everyone who's going to be impacted by this, and we all have to start thinking about this too, right? It's like, okay, what is my purpose in this world? If not, if I lose writing and I can't do YouTube anymore, like, what is my purpose in the world? What space am I fulfilling? And I've started to carve out different niches for myself, right? But that's still a lingering question. Like, where do we go from here? How do we exist in society and in community with one another when so much of our existence, and I'm speaking specifically of white collar workers here, because if you're in a white collar career, like, everything is predicated on ego and who you know and what they can do for you and going to happy hours, and it's very performative in nature. But if all of that goes away, like, what replaces it, right? Like, we've lost the social institutions that once existed, that people were comfortable with, and we've outsourced them to all this hustle culture and big city life. And I don't think we have an alternative for it. So figuring out how to participate in society, and of course, like, spiritual questions about, like, what are we all doing here, right? Like there's important stuff here, and of course, like, the actual literal questions of, like, how am I going to feed myself? How am I going to take care of myself? I think these are really important questions people need to ask. So before I close, I want to do a shameless self promo, if you will indulge me. I don't have any sponsors or anything, but I have been working on right at the moment, it's going to be a digital book because I'm self-publishing the whole thing. But I've been working on a book called Human Optional: How to Survive the Death of Knowledge Work and the Age of AI. This is the manuscript and draft, and it talks about basically the reasons why you're going to lose your jobs, not just because of AI, who's going to be most affected, and what you can start doing to adapt. I think, the window of time in which people have to take action is open right now, but it's rapidly waning. So if you want to reskill, if you want to learn just a completely different skill, if you're concerned about losing your job in the future, now is the time to really start taking action. So the book is a framework for understanding why jobs are going away, the people who are going to be most affected by those job losses, because like the piece in the New York Magazine showed, like, not everyone is being impacted the same, right? So just because you're not seeing disruption in your career field doesn't mean it's not happening somewhere else. We covered with software developers, right? Especially in the entry level, they're definitely experiencing right now. There's quantitative data to back up the qualitative data that everyone has been seeing. So I think this offers a good framework for starting to think about these things and where we're going. It's going to launch next week on Kindle. So if you're interested, I would love it if you would pre-order it. That will just help me know that people are interested in this topic more. And it's just a good way to start thinking about these things if you haven't already. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.